Awesome. Thank you so much, honestly, for having me back. Last time we did this, it was so much fun. I had just a blast hanging out with everyone. Man, today I'm really excited about what we're going to cover just because this is something that personally I utilize in my life every single day. And I think that if we do this, we will experience life completely different, right? And I think the first thing that we need to realize is that life is always happening for us. It's not happening to us. And we have a choice in this life, right? And so I say this often: if in 6 months you're in the same place that you are right now and you're not happy with it, it's because of choices that you made to stay in the same place. And now I know sometimes we feel helpless in situations, but what I love is that as soon as we bring awareness to something, it's almost as if we bring it into the light and we see it. And as humans, we have this incredible gift, and I'm sure you've experienced this before, where you're actually in the middle of a situation interacting, and then you're almost like outside of your body watching you interact, how you're treating this person, how you're responding, and you're thinking at the same time as all of this is happening, wow, this is not how I want to do this. Wow. Or maybe you're experiencing something great and you have that thought of, wow, this is really incredible that this is what the present moment is offering me right now, right? And that's really what I want to hit on. I want to bring awareness to what it is that is happening, because once we can identify it, then we get to change it, right? And so many times you hear somebody learn something, or somebody tells you, hey, you've got to make this adjustment, right? And I started using this analogy, this illustration, because I mean, to me, honestly, it just makes sense. It might be a little corny, but I don't care. It makes sense. So if you're anything like me, back in the day when you were young, you probably loved drinking out of a water hose. That's just what I did, right? Me and my cousins would be outside playing football or baseball. And whenever we got thirsty, you just run over to the water hose, you turn it on, you just let that thing blast, and you just drink as much terrible water as you want, knowing that you're going to be okay. Honestly, that's probably why, no, I'm not going to make a COVID joke. But the water hose analogy, right? If the water hose is not pouring out water, and you look at it and you're like, what? I turned it on. Why is water not coming out of the water hose? And then you look at it and you see that there is a knot in the water hose. You don't automatically say, okay, this water hose is broken, so I need to throw it away. No, all you do is at least I would hope, all you would do is take the knot out of the water hose so that you can use it again to its full potential. The same thing is with us, okay? You're not broken as a parent. You're not broken as a future spouse or current spouse, right? Whatever your situation is. You're not broken as a son or as a daughter. You're not broken as a friend. You're not. There's just some knots, right? That all of us have them. And when we find that knot, guess what? That should be a celebration, because now it's, hey, I know what's wrong with the water hose. Now I know why the water wasn't coming out. So I can get excited about the fact that there is something that I can do to fix that and to make the water come back out again, instead of identifying the water hose as broken. So with everything that we learn and everything that Frollo is, all the resources that they're giving you, we can choose to see it as, dang it, man, like I keep messing up, I keep being broken. Or we can choose to see it as, man, I'm so excited that I'm becoming aware of these things, because the more I become aware, the more change I can actually create in my life. So today I want to talk about creating a better experience. And the number one thing that we've got to identify in order to create a better experience is, what experience are we having, right? And so I want to really hit on suffering, because as humans, we all experience it, okay? The number one thing that we are guaranteed in this life is actually pain. That is why we come out of the womb crying, because it's the one thing that is guaranteed. So what creates suffering? We've got to identify what actually is creating the continuous suffering, because pain is an occurrence. I call it pockets of pain. There's actually a chemical change that happens in your body when you experience either physical pain or emotional pain, right? And this chemical change that happens when somebody says something to you, when an event happens and you take an offense, right? It happens for 90 seconds. After those 90 seconds, if you're still experiencing that pain, you're creating it. Now, I know that can seem heavy, but it's actually not. It should be encouraging, because if I'm creating it, that means I can stop it and I can choose to create something else. So that's really, really good news. Okay. So what's creating suffering? It's our thoughts. Okay. Our thoughts create suffering. Now, I want to prove this to you really quickly. If you've ever watched a movie and then something starts happening in that movie that is not that great, right? And then you have just this random thought of, man, I couldn't imagine what I would do if that would happen to somebody that I love, right? And then for some reason, your mind starts going in that direction and you start imagining it and thinking about it. And then all of a sudden you start feeling sad. You start feeling hurt. You start feeling kind of defeated, like, oh, I just don't like this feeling, right? And maybe you even start crying. It could happen. Maybe you want to reach out to them just to make sure they're okay in that moment. It's crazy because we all experience this every single day. And what's even more wild is that the thought wasn't even real. It was fictional. But the product that it produced was real and tangible, and it coursed through our bodies. So that tells me and tells you that thoughts don't even have to be real. They just have to be there. And whatever it is that we're telling ourselves in our head, our body has no choice but to respond to it, right? And we're going to hit a little bit on that here in a little bit. So our thoughts are creating our suffering, just like our thoughts create our joy, right? Whenever you fell in love with someone, right? It's not because necessarily of that person, but it's about the thoughts that you had about that person. That is why you fast forward to months or years later, and all of a sudden, why don't I love this person? It was because our thoughts changed about them. And we allowed them to change. We allowed our brain to create problems so that it could solve solutions. And this is why you see in so many relationships, before the relationship really gets going, your thoughts are just incredible about them. And the problem that your brain is solving then is, oh, I don't want to be alone. They're my go-to. They're going to be the one. And so you're looking for the one. So your brain says that's a problem that we got to find a solution for. Then when you're with that person, why is it that now you cannot help but find everything that's wrong with that person and pick them apart? And you're just like, oh, they do this and this annoying habit and this drives me crazy. Well, it's because now your brain is creating new problems to solve, and it has no choice but to do that. So we actually have the ability to give it different problems to solve. That's why as soon as a relationship ends, even though you noticed all these terrible things that you didn't like and annoyances and whatever, once the relationship ends, now there's a new problem. And that's why we start missing the person. And we think that that person is the greatest thing in the world. And it contradicts with what we were experiencing, but now we're experiencing and we're so confused because I don't know what's going on. All it is your brain is giving you a problem that needs a solution to. And so this is how powerful our mind is and how much it can control us, but we have a choice. That's the good news. And the good news is the more that we become aware of it, the more we can do something to change it. So your thoughts create your feelings, okay? It's what's going to create your suffering. Now, suffering is specific with this. It only happens when you make it mean something about you. You make it personal. I'll give you a good example, all right? I just released an episode this past week, me and my co-host on our podcast, you know, the Single Dads podcast. If y'all haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. I think it's pretty cool personally. It's me, I'm a divorced dad, and my co-host Scott is a widowed dad. And so it's like completely different perspectives. He's older than me. I'm a little bit younger. And so it's really cool, just the mesh of it. And it's just a good conversation. So, but we just released an episode because I was going through a season of suffering because of my little girl. So my little girl is now starting to withdraw a little bit. And I have been suffering because the thoughts that I've been creating in my head is, what am I doing wrong? Why doesn't she love me anymore? Right? Like, where did I fail? Where did I go wrong? Where am I dropping the ball? What can I do to solve this? And it was just about me and how can I. So that was causing pain and suffering in my life because I was making it mean something about me. Let's just put it in this way, right? Because I deal with divorce recovery a ton. That's really my specialty. When somebody leaves you, The only reason why you're suffering is because you continue to question now your worth, and you make that mean something about you. The fact that they left, it's because I'm not good enough. I couldn't do enough. I. This is what creates suffering. And what's awesome is that those are just thoughts that are optional. There is no absolute truth to those thoughts. Just like in the movie, when we had that thought about something happening to a family member, it is literally a delusion that we are choosing to choose. So why not choose a different option that can make you see things in a different way and help you show up in a different way? Because depending on how you feel is going to dictate how you show up and will dictate the results in your life. And so when you suffer, it's because it's all about me. And where your focus goes, you will fulfill naturally. Whatever you're focusing on, you're going to lead it into fulfillment. Okay. And so when you're constantly thinking like, man, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Now you get into this mode where you feel anxious around your kid. You feel impatient. You feel kind of like, I have to try and make it up. And then you become pushy and you start doing what is in the word. You start pushing them away because now you're operating not out of a place of gratitude, love, and abundance, but you're operating out of a place of fear. And so now the thing that you've been focusing on the most actually ends up being fulfilled because you couldn't stop thinking about it. Your thoughts will create the reality, right? And there's a ton of science to back this up. I wish I could get into all of that. And so when you change your focus to, this is not about me, right? And this last episode that we released on the Single Dads podcast, I dropped an article that my girlfriend sent me where it's literally a scientific fact that kids between the ages of 9 and 13 start to withdraw from the parents, start criticize the parent, start looking for all of your failures and pointing them out, literally all of this stuff. And it has nothing to do with you as a parent. And by God, that made me feel incredible. I was like, so you're telling me I'm not a mess up? I like that. You're telling me that science and biology is taking its place. That's incredible. That's so encouraging to me. So guess what? In an instance, my suffering ended. I no longer believe that I'm not a good dad. I no longer believe that I'm not doing enough. I no longer believe that my daughter doesn't love me because she's choosing to. No, I now know that her brain is actually making room for her to step out of the childhood and into adolescence. And so in order to do that, her brain is literally wired in a way where she says, hey, I can no longer accept you treating me as a child because that's not who I am anymore. And she's not even thinking about this. It's just happening. Life is taking its course. And so now guess what? I get to adjust my parenting. And I get to adjust my thought process. So now when I'm hanging out with her, I'm not like being pushy and needy and trying to figure things out. No, now I'm just enjoying her. And when she's a little turd, I'm just like, it's not about me. This is just the stage that she's in, right? And so it eliminates your suffering when you start to realize that this has nothing to do with me. You hear it being said time and time again, right? Projection. People are projecting. Yes. It is absolutely true. When somebody says, hey, bro, you are this, or hey, lady, you're this, that's just them projecting how they feel about themselves. When somebody cheats on somebody, it has nothing to do with the person they cheated on. It has everything to do with the way that they value and see themselves. And they're probably holding on to regret, which leads them to create regretful situations, right? So when we can come to the realization and accept the fact that I have a choice to make this mean nothing about me, because that's just delusion. There was no facts there. I'm just entertaining it and I don't have anything to back it up. And then I choose to say, you know what? This is not about me. Now your suffering ends. If you can find the blessing in the middle of the pain, your suffering will end, okay? So that is what's going to create suffering, and that's how you end your suffering. But what I want to do is, usually when we're in a place of suffering, we're very intense. There's very intense emotions, right? And I never tell people to avoid emotions or to try and think their way out of an emotion. Absolutely not. We've got to process what we're feeling. You hear it all the time. You've got to feel it to heal it. But in order to feel it, you have to reveal it, okay? So I'm going to give you a very, very practical exercise that is going to bring you mental clarity if you do it the way that I tell you to do it right now, okay? So you have to create mental clarity in order to start beginning to create a better experience and being intentional about it. How are you going to get mental clarity? You have to process your emotions. You have to process your emotions. What's happening whenever we don't have mental clarity is that there's so many things going on in our head. There's so many suppressed emotions that sometimes we even say, I don't even know what I feel right now. I just feel numb, which is actually an emotion and a feeling in its own. And so whenever you're going through this, this is what I want you to do, okay? And this is a good exercise to do weekly, honestly, especially if you have a high stress, high paced life. This is so key. I do this almost daily. I should be doing it daily, but I do other types of journaling as well, just for myself, right? But the way you're going to do it is you're going to start off very simple, just by writing, I feel, and then write whatever you feel. I feel overwhelmed because it seems like everything that I do is never enough, and people are always asking from me and no one's ever checking up on me. And this is, and you got to be honest, reveal everything that's in here, because you don't have mental clarity because you're overthinking. So when you're overthinking, it's time to throw all of those things onto paper to bring that clarity. And as you begin to write, I'm just going to warn you right now, it's probably going to get a little ugly. You're probably going to start crying. You're probably going to start getting mad. All of these things are going to start coming up, but that's good. That's healthy for you. That is weakness leaving the body. The more that you suppress those things, the more you're a ticking time bomb. And now all of a sudden your kid, right, drops a glass and breaks it. And you're like, what are you doing? And it's not because you want to be like that, but it's because you've suppressed so many emotions that all it took was one single event to make you pop off. And I don't know about you, but those are not the parents that we want to be. And so let's be intentional about actually letting those feelings completely out. Now, what's going to happen in this process, you're going to begin to write. You're going to start feeling. You're going to start processing those feelings. And then you're going to reach a place where you kind of not feeling anything anymore. You're just writing. And some people say, oh, I just felt numb after a while. That's perfect. That means you can just stop because now your head's clear. And what you're going to do after that is I want you to go ahead and then write one thing, just one thing that you're grateful for. And then I want you to write why you're grateful for it. So 5 different sentences, specific sentences with details on why I'm grateful for this one thing. That's going to put you into a different headspace. That's going to put you into a grateful, loving, abundant headspace. And when you're in that headspace, you make the best decisions in the world. When you're in that headspace, that's how you can start creating a better experience in your life, regardless of what you go through. And I have a great example that I'm going to use later on. Okay. That is how you're going to process your emotions. Okay. And right after you do the gratefulness and you identify that, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to question your suffering. Question it. This is how you're going to question it. Is any of this true? Whenever you put all of that on paper and you write about what you're suffering, or you're encountering a situation that's causing you a ton of suffering, I just want you to ask yourself, is any of this true? Everything that I'm making this situation mean about myself, is any of that true? Okay, then write down your answer. Some of you might say, yes, actually, that is very true. Some of you might say, absolutely not. Once you're in a clear state, you're like, heck no, that's not true. That has nothing to do with me, right? Then I want you to say, what evidence is there to back this up? Because just because someone says something is not enough. So we got to do that for ourselves. This is how you break limiting beliefs. You've got to stack the evidence. Hey, this isn't true. I know that I'm good enough. Okay. What evidence do I have? What evidence do I have to prove that I'm good enough? Okay, I'm ambitious. Okay, what's the evidence for my ambition? I've noticed that in my life, every single time a challenge comes, I go at it full throttle, and I've overcome a lot. And yes, I've taken some losses, but I've always turned those into lessons. And you start writing, you start stacking the evidence, because it's not enough to just positively affirm yourself like, oh, you're great, you're above and beyond, you're this and that. Like that's not enough. We need hardcore evidence. This is why it's so easy. When somebody critiques us, we take it so personal because they tell you specifically why they're critiquing you. Bro, you are this because da 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 da. I hate when you do da 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 da. It's always specific. But think about this. When somebody gives us a compliment, we can't take it in that well. It doesn't have the same effect. It's because, man, you're a great dad. It's so generic. But if someone was like, hey, man, you're an incredible father. I see you every single time you take that little girl to the playground. You don't sit there on your phone and you don't care what anybody else is thinking about you. You actually run through the playground with her. And I can tell that she feels seen and heard and loved by you because you go above and beyond for that person. That's a compliment. That'll stick. Why? Because there's evidence to provide it. Okay. So is any of this true? And what evidence is there for that? And then you are going to collect it and stack the evidence in your favor. Okay. And then what I want you to ask one question. If you're just stuck and you're like, man, I can't find it. I can't find anything good. If it just seems too overwhelming, I want you to give your brain this problem to find a solution for. I want you to ask this question. What else could be true? If you're believing that it's true that you weren't good enough for this or that or whatever it is, right? And if you're in that negative headspace, I just want you to ask the question and explore a little bit. What else could be true? For example, with my little girl, what else could be true besides me being a terrible dad, feeling like a terrible dad? What else could be true? Oh, well, now, like, this is her stage in life. And that's true. And because this is her stage in life, there is actually a chemical change that's happening in her brain that's causing her to act this way. So that's true. So maybe it doesn't mean that I'm a bad dad because I never changed. I didn't start acting differently towards her. I didn't stop showing up differently towards her. Nothing's changed on that end. So maybe that's true, right? And let your brain take you on a journey and explore thinking. It doesn't mean you have to accept everything that comes up. You get to choose. What am I going to accept? What is actually going to serve me to create the results that I want in my life? And if it's not going to serve me, why do I have to accept it? Where is the law that says I have to accept that? No. Accept what you want to accept, right? And give yourself some grace. Be patient with yourself throughout this process. Okay, the last thing that I want to hit on is creating a better experience. This is where your greatest asset comes in that everybody in life has. That is choice. We all have a choice. Every single day when we wake up, we have a choice. Am I going to choose to continue in the same thought process and keep looking at life the exact same way? Or am I going to choose to make a shift now that I'm aware of this, right? Am I going to choose to not implement any of these exercises and continue to experience life as it is? Or am I going to choose to be intentional about creating a better experience? Because that's what I want to live. I have one life and I want to live an incredible life and I want to experience it in that way. And I know, trust me, the thought comes in of, well, you don't know what I'm going through and you don't know what I've been through. And trust me, I will never devalue that statement. I can't imagine the stories that are even just in this room, the pain, the heartache. I really can't. But there is an incredible book that I recommend that we all read, and it is called The Happiest Man on Earth. And it is from a Holocaust survivor, and it is phenomenal. And I took a quote that he said. One of the quotes from that book says, here's what I learned. Happiness does not fall from the sky. It is in your hands. Happiness comes from within yourself. If it's in my hands, that means I have a choice to utilize it. I have a choice on how I choose to see things. Really, whenever you stop suffering and you create your own experience, all you're doing is you're choosing to say, this has nothing to do with me. They have their own journey. Life is doing its own thing, right? And I'm choosing to see it in a perspective that's actually going to bless me. That's all it is. Let me give you a great example. One of my clients, she's a phenomenal woman. She's going through a pretty bad divorce, right? She came to me completely broken in December, and she had been working with me for 2 weeks. And I did this whole teaching on how to actually enjoy the holidays in the middle of the worst time of your life, right? And I actually uploaded a similar video on my Instagram, so you can go check that out if you want to. But essentially what I said is, your circumstance is, this is my first Christmas alone. Okay. Now she had a choice, and she chose this to see it differently. Okay. She didn't change her situation. She just chose to see it differently. Now her situation is, this is her first Christmas alone, and she's going to be without a partner, and she's going through a divorce, right? That's her situation. She can't change that, but she can change how she chooses to experience it. This is what she did. She started thinking and seeing it in a different way. In other words, she started asking, what else could be true? It is true that this is my first Christmas alone. It is true that this is my first Christmas without him. It is true that I'm in the process of going through one of the hardest times of my life. All of that is true. We're not going to be delusional and say this is not reality. Absolutely not. But she asked, what else could be true? And then it took her down this vein where she started discovering, wow, actually now I get to decorate the house the way that I want to decorate it. And for the first time in a while, I don't feel the pressure of having to go here and try and please all these people. Now I have full control for the first time in a minute on, where do I want to spend my time and how much time do I want to spend there, right? She had the choice now to say, you know what, I'm in a season in my life, because all this is a season. It's not eternity, it's a season. She said, in this season of my life, I actually have the ability now to go to some of the events that my friends were having that I used to not be able to because my partner didn't like them, and out of respect, I wouldn't go. And now I get to do these things. So she created her own experience. And I even uploaded her testimonial on one of my Instagram reels. And she said it's one of the best Christmases she's had in a very, very long time, while she's going through the worst time in the world. Now, let me give you another example. I have a gentleman that I met with, going through the same situation, same scenario, except he's been going through it for probably a little bit longer now, right? Which in essence, based off of what everybody believes, that time brings healing, he should actually be doing better. But time has nothing to do with healing. It's all about action. So he starts telling me about Christmas. And man, it was miserable. I was alone. Starts breaking down on the call, right? Obviously, I have a ton of empathy for him and his situation. And I tell him, I'm like, hey, look, your situation, it's neutral. It's not good and it's not bad. It is what you choose to make out of it. And he couldn't understand that. And so I told him, I was like, look, you just experienced the worst Christmas of your life. And you're the one that told me that. But I have evidence from another person that's going through the exact same circumstance, and they experienced the best Christmas of their life. Now, that doesn't mean that their circumstances are different. They're the same. It's the same situation, which means he is seeing it as this is a bad thing, and she is seeing it as this could be a great opportunity. It's neither one said, this is what I wish was happening, right? I wanted this situation to happen. Neither one of them is saying that. It's just how we're choosing to look at it, because what we focus on will lead to fulfillment. If you focus on, this is the loneliest Christmas I'm ever going to have, then guess what you're going to experience? You're going to experience the loneliest Christmas you've ever had. If you're focusing on, man, being a single parent is the loneliest journey in the world, then that is what's going to happen. But if you choose to focus on, man, being a single parent has given me an incredible opportunity to be a part of a community like Frollo, right? To be a part of this community. And now guess what? I get to meet and interact with a ton of people that are going through the same things that I'm going. And now I get to invest into my child the way that I feel is best to invest into them. You're going to have a different experience. You didn't change your situation, but you changed the way that you approached it, and you changed the way that you experienced it. This is how we create the experiences that we want. This is how we eliminate suffering, and we enter into pure bliss and joy and gratitude, right? It doesn't happen by accident. It's like the quote said, happiness doesn't fall from the sky. It is a choice. It is a tangible, intentional choice that we have, that we can create. And that is the ability that God or universe, whatever it is that you want to believe, gave us as humans. We get to create what we want to create with what's in our hands. You can't change. We can't change what's in our hands, but I can change what I do with it. If somebody puts this phone in my hands, I cannot deny that this is a phone. People would think I'm an idiot. They'd be like, bro, clearly that's a phone, right? But I choose what I can do with it, right? I can either drop it, I can put it in my pocket. How do I want to experience this phone right now? It's completely up to me. I can't change that it's a phone, but I can change what I do with it. And that is what happens with our situations. I'm not telling you to be delusional. That's not it. That's not it. I'm telling you to be intentional on how you want to experience this, because you have the power to do that. Delusion, honestly, and I'm just going to hit on this a little bit, okay? Like, why is it that whenever we think about the worst possible things, that's being realistic? But when we think about the great things, that's being unrealistic. Have you noticed that? How you're not delusional if you're just creating this terrible story in your head about, man, this person did this and this and this and this, and that means that I am this and I am this and that's not delusion. That's reality and that's honesty. But if we choose to say, man, this person did this and that has nothing to do with me because I know who I am as a person, and at the end of the day, they have their own choices. Now that's delusional. It's like, whoa, hey, you can't do that, right? Hey, Christmas, your first divorce Christmas, it has to suck. It has to be incredibly painful. Why? Why is that reality? And why is having the best Christmas that you've had in years, why is that delusional? It doesn't make sense to me, right? If anything, both of them are delusional because it's caused by overthinking. It's caused by creating a narrative and creating a story that is going to fit what we want it to fit. Maybe we want to feel pain because we feel like that is actually going to make us better, when the reality is it's not, right? Or maybe we're choosing to, you know what? I can't change what I'm going through. I know that. I can't make grass grow, but I can choose how I look at this field. I can choose what I see the potential in that field. And that is how you're going to create the experience that you want to create as a parent, as a mom, as a dad, as a son, as a daughter, as a friend, as an employee, as a business owner. It does not matter. Wherever it is that you're at in life, if you can choose to be intentional about how you want to experience it, you will begin to design a life the way that you actually enjoy every single moment of it. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google. Honestly, I think almost any podcasting, called the Single Dads Podcast.
Okay, great. I'll just pop that in.
I got really creative. I used the most obvious title.
It does what it says on the tin, right?
Yeah,
People know exactly what they're getting.
Exactly. And it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, we never bash on single moms. It's really a single parent podcast.
Yeah.
But it's because we're single dads that we were like, oh yeah, let's do it. It started out of a very passionate place because we were in single dad groups on Facebook. The amount of baloney that people would post about the baby mamas, right? And I was like, what the heck? And then you see, obviously, single moms that post about, deadbeat dads and all this. And I was like, what is going on, everyone? We got to change the conversation. We got to change the narrative. And so that's really why we started it. So it's been an incredible journey. So yeah, check it out. I'd love that. Do you have any tips on how to change the flow of negative thoughts to positive thoughts? Yes, Daniel, actually, what James just said, the journaling exercise that I talked about, that is a great way to begin to do that and to just recognize when it's happening. If you can recognize when it's happening and become aware of it, that's step one. Step two is question it. Like I said earlier, wait, is any of this true? Is any of this true? And then ask, what else could be true? And allow yourself freedom to explore what else could be true. And then actually acknowledge the fact that, wow, I have a choice on which one I choose, where I want to let this thing lead me. And so, and something that I want to encourage you with, Daniel, is that as a human, you're going to have a 50-50 experience. Like Negative thoughts will always creep in and step in. And then positive thoughts will always be there as well. But we get to choose which one we listen to loudly, right? And so that's the biggest thing. So if for some reason you're like, man, I'm practicing all these things and for some reason negative thoughts still come, guess what? You're a human. It's part of your human experience. But you get to choose, okay, you know what? This is what I'm going to listen to. And this is what I'm going to stack the evidence with, right? And so I think those are going to be really, really helpful for you, Daniel. Also, something very practical that I've done, Daniel, is back when I was really, really struggling. And even now when I find myself in a situation where I'm just like, oh, I'm in a bad headspace, right? Like the other day, not the other day, it was probably like 3 months ago, actually. It's just so vivid in my mind that I was at the gym. I was just struggling. I don't know why. I just had these terrible thoughts about myself and doubting myself, even as a coach and as a business owner, as a dad, as a boyfriend, as a son. I felt like I was being bombarded, right? And I remember I was at the gym and then it wasn't helping. It helped the stress come out. And so then I was like, man, I am going to go on a walk with my dog. So I go on a walk with my dog and it's still attacking me. Again, see, I'm doing the thing that I teach people not to do. Don't distract yourself, face it head on. And I was just taking a walk. And then finally, I did the most practical thing. Why am I thinking this way right now? Is what I said out loud. I was like, come on, man. This isn't you. This isn't who you are. Like, and immediately it kind of like took me out of that to where I became aware, oh, this is happening. And like I said, when we become aware of something, then we can begin to change it. So that's the biggest step. And that's something practical that will really, really help. Is this approach easy to use with children? I'd like to change my 9-year-old's outlook. She's struggling with our separation and with confidence and with her peers. Yes. I mean, this is all around. This is all around. Now, what I can say is that you cannot change their outlook. They have to choose to do it, right? But what I can say is that you can provide an environment where it is so filled with like looking at the bright side of everything that you design a culture that she has almost no choice but to adapt to, right? We are a product of our environments. Here's the thing, even genetic stuff, and I know I'm going on a limb saying this, but there's a ton of research scientifically that backs this up, okay? Even when something is genetic, that doesn't mean it's guaranteed, okay? It is all about the environment that gene develops in. That is what produces it. So if the environment has such a heavy influence on genetics, right? And this goes from like disease to like, addictions, everything. If our environment has that much influence on the genetics genes in our body, how much more would it have on just our minds, right? And so I want you to speak life into that child. And honestly, there's something very powerful. I have a whole teaching on self-talk and self-thought and the power that words carry, but the only reason they carry it is because of the thoughts that we have about them. And there was a study that was done where it showed how, depending on what you said, if it was negative or positive, it changes the water molecules in water, changes the molecules actually. And you can see, actually, I think I have it. Am I able to share this? Here we go. I want y'all to see this because this is wild. I'm not making this stuff up. Okay. Y'all see the screenshot? This is water. This is water molecules. When they played heavy metal, look at what it did. When they said thank you to the water, look at what the molecules did. It's beautiful. And then look at love and appreciation. Look at what that happened. You make me sick, I will kill you. God, that was graphic. I'm sorry, guys. I should have edited that one. But look at what the water did, the molecules. And this is what I really want to hit on right here, okay? Adolf Hitler, we all know who he is, okay? Look at that. Look at what it did. Now, Mother Teresa, we all know who that is also. Look at that. Now, here's what's crazy. If somebody has never heard of Adolf Hitler, it's just words. It has no power. So it's not the words that have the power. It's the thought that we attach to the word that releases the power. You see what I'm saying? And so that is why positive affirmation doesn't work unless you believe it, unless it's here. And that's when it's packed with power. So for your child, I would say, speak life into them. talk about how they're the kindest kid in the world. But before you do that, identify moments of their kindness. Look at everything that you can. Focus on, man, when are they being kind? Like, how are they doing it? And be specific with it. Because when you speak these things into them, there's actually a change that happens in your body, because your body is like 70% water, and then your heart and your brain are like 80 to 90% water. So just think about the power that your thoughts towards them and that your words towards them is having. It's actually changing molecules in their body. That's why when somebody says something mean to us, we actually feel it. Not wild, you feel it in your body. That's because it's changing the molecules in your body in that instance. That is the 90-second experience that we have. So you can do the same thing. You can give them those fuzzy feelings, which really it's just our water molecules like changing, which doesn't sound that great, right? But that's what's actually happening. You can do that for them. And at the end of the day, you can't lead your child where you're not at, right? And I'm not saying that that's not where you're at, but what I'm saying is you can get very intentional of, where do I want my child to follow me in? Because they're going to do what we do, and they're watching and they're paying attention. And right now, honestly, you're in the season that I'm in. You're in the season. It's 9 to 13. So if you listen to that podcast episode that I just shared, you're going to identify that, man, my kid, it's not that he's like this. It's that they're experiencing a change where they have to rebel. They have to challenge. They have to pull away, because they're making the transition into adolescence, right? And then now you're going to feel a lot more peace of like, this is just a season. So now I don't have to worry about trying to like fix everything, but now I can just focus on speaking life into my child. Hopefully that helps you. It's all science, like, and it blows my mind sometimes the more research I do, and it just backs up everything that I practice, right? And I'm like, I wonder why some of my clients have so much freedom in 30 days. And it's because the science is there. And when you apply these things, our life changes. So I appreciate you guys. You guys are so kind. I love spending time with y'all. I can't wait to do it again.